So, good evening, participants, and welcome to the today's webinar. Uh, Today's webinar is sponsored by, as usual, SPJMR GMP, along with very prestigious school from Germany, that is EBS Business School. SPJMR GMP and EBS Business School offers MBA and MS programs to be completed in Germany. EBS School, for those of you who have also joined by studying them, they have highly ranked MS program in finance as well. And today we have two very distinguished faculty members from EBS who are specialists in finance. And so I will welcome from our participants as well as from SPJMR, Professor Rasa and Professor Paul. My name is Milind Kamath. I'm your host today, and I will moderate both the question and answers in the second part of the webinar. But before I hand over to Professor Rasa for his opening comments about what the disruptions, large language models and chatbots like ChatGPT can do in financial sector, just a quick word on the housekeeping rules. We have questions collected before the webinar, so I will be moderating that. I will encourage some of you, if there are more questions, put it in chat window. We will have around 20-25 minutes of Q&A after Professor Paul explains his view and how the tool works. So without further ado, I will ask Professor Rasa to give his expert view as he sees it from Germany, how the large language models and their impact on financial business analytics in general. Professor Rasa, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Milind, and welcome everybody. My name is Rasha. I'm a finance professor at EBS, and I'm also serving as a vice in education currently. And actually, in our Master in Finance program, teach a fintech course. And part of this fintech course is related to machine learning, and one type of machine learning that has gained lots of popularity recently is related to large language models. And, you know, when we think about, in general, machine learning, I think that we can imagine two scenarios. Scenario number one is that machine learning is going to keep the progress and reach the level of what people call AGI, or general artificial intelligence. Another world is where we will never reach this level. And, you know, we don't know. We don't have a crystal ball, and we cannot predict which of these worlds is going to take place. Now, if the general artificial intelligence gets created at some point, currently we don't have it, but if it does, I think it will have consequences which are very difficult to predict, and primarily because, you know, hardware has been following the development of Moore's law for a very, very long time. And what we can then expect is that, you know, this will continue to some extent, and we will reach the level when these machines are going to be much, much smarter than we are because of the exponential growth. However, if this does not happen, we will not observe. I mean, there are questions. I'm sorry, there was one raised hand. I saw it, and there is also a question in chat. And, you know, I will be trying to handle both. I apologize because I missed the raised hand, but if you want to ask a question, please do ask it. I'm very okay for interaction. But anyhow, what I wanted to say is that, you know, we observe two worlds, one where these things are going to become smarter than we are, and the world where it's not going to happen. Which of these two worlds is going to happen? I don't know. Currently, this is not the case. At least this is what we know. Large language models are much more capable now than they were even 1 month ago. They are much more capable than 6 months ago. Like, things that have been developed over the last couple of months are just purely, I would say, spectacular. And this mostly comes from the fact, from a big, actually, big change of paradigm in machine learning, which is the following. Like if you asked machine learning scientists like 2 years ago, or maybe even a year ago, if you build larger and larger and larger model, what is going to happen? You will get the consensus answer. What is going to happen? You're going to have overfitting of data. And if you think about, let's say, a bachelor students of economics or finance, this is like you're trying to run a regression where you have more explanatory variables than observations. And then you can explain any phenomena perfectly. And this is what people believe is going to happen with large models. However, theory has evolved, and we have seen that actually by increasing these models dramatically and increasing the parameters in these neural networks, deep neural networks that these models use, we actually do not get into overfitting. We do not get into overcomplicating things and giving false explanations. And this has been a paradigm shift. And that actually made people start to build these very, very, very large models, which are trained on very, very, very large data sets. And they're they have improved dramatically over time. I think that it's very difficult to say where the world is going to go, but I would say, many aspects of financial industry are going to get impacted, but some of them are still gonna, I don't think that they will be impacted that much. To give you an example, if you think about M&A profession, investment bankers, you want to become an investment banker, work in Goldman Sachs, work in JP Morgan. Your primary goal, a day-to-day job of an analyst, if you participate in an M&A process, is to build valuation models, value firms, and build beautiful PowerPoints where these results are presented to clients, to counterparts, etc., etc. And there are many, many, many smart people working in Goldman Sachs. Many smart people. Cranking number in Excel, if you want to work in Goldman Sachs, that's a condition sine qua non. This is something that you have to be good at. However, you do not become a partner in Goldman Sachs for creating beautiful and complicated valuation models in Excel. Okay, you have to be able to do that. Everybody who became a partner was amazing in that, but there are many, many people that are amazing in that, and they don't make it to the partner level at the Goldman Sachs. So how do you become a partner in Goldman Sachs? Well, actually by bringing in new deals. You have to be good in what you're doing, but still you have to bring in new M&As. You have to bring in new IPOs. And this is how you become a partner in Goldman Sachs. So my prediction, for example, for investment banking would be that this segment, some things will be automatized. You will not have to do many of these things by hand anymore, etc., etc. However, still, partners are going to become partners in Goldman Sachs by bringing in new deals and bringing in new IPOs. So I believe this is going to stay people's business. However, I also believe that this will open up completely new businesses that we haven't seen before in investment banking. For example, if we approach Goldman Sachs, that they help you sell a company that is, let's say, worth 5 million, they will laugh at you. They just won't even lift a pen because their fees are way too small for them to be able to do such a business. However, this might change. We might start seeing platforms where smaller valuation companies are being bought and sold, and valuations are calculated from publicly or privately available data more automatically. So I think this is one of prediction that I can try to give about the impact on investment banking. I think it will open up completely new markets, for example, markets that haven't been served by investment banks so far because they were way too labor intensive. So that's one of the aspects. I could keep on talking, but maybe it's good that I start answering also some questions. And Paul, you also please jump in, because if it continues like this, I will be just talking. So how reliable ChatGPT in data accuracy for financial analysis is? I mean, It's not accurate, but in some things it is accurate. In some things it's better than humans, in some things it's worse than humans. And we don't have a deep insight actually yet, but there are some developments in ChatGPT that are actually pretty spectacular. In some things it's really, really bad, and it invents facts, it invents all kind of things. I mean, invents, it's not invention, it's just a property of a model. Model is just basically, I mean, I think it's good that I just briefly explained how large language models work. You give a large text as an input, and actually, usually, the larger the text as an input up to some limit, the better. And then you get some text as an output. And this output is basically just based on probabilities of the next most likely word. Actually, I'm lying. It's not the next most likely word. It's actually not a word by a next most likely token. And tokens are like 2 to 3 letter combinations. And actually, it's not even the next most likely one. I'm lying again. So people have noticed that if, for example, just let me give you an example. The simplest possible example. Imagine you collect all articles on Wikipedia that mention word cat, and you calculate what is the probability, what is the most likely next letter after letter A. If somebody put A as an input, what is the most likely next letter? I will now invent, let's say it's B. But if you do the same thing on a text dedicated to dogs, you will get that the next likely letter is actually D. It's different. It turns out that it's different. Okay. But now imagine that you do that it's not one letter input, one letter output, but large text input and large text output. This is what ChatGPT does. But what's interesting is that when people were just picking the next most likely, always the text generated by these models was boring. Only when they introduced a so-called heat parameter, in other words, that not always you pick the most next likely, but usually you will, in 80% of cases, you will pick the most likely next token, but sometimes you will pick the second, third, fourth, whatnot. Then actually text started to be really, really interested generating by these large models. So, asking whether the model of this type is precise. I mean, the only thing I can tell you is, it's a model, it's precise given its construction. But whether application of such model on any particular field is the best application, that's a tricky question. You cannot always expect to get the answer. I have seen people asking ChatGPT all kind of things, and things that it was not built for, like I have seen, there is a paper online written by a couple of actually quite known people in finance where they use it for sentiment analysis. And they ask it, okay, is this a positive or a negative sentence? And of course, if you ask a yes or no question, ChatGPT will tell you yes or no, it's positive or it's negative, but it will not measure sentiment. This will be almost a random answer that you will get. And people wrote scientific papers using this kind of methodology. So I think it's really important to understand what's going under the hood and where it makes sense to apply it and where it does not make sense to apply it. But anyhow, it has completely surprised us with how good answer it gets in many, many, many topics. And now we have also plugins. We have, it used to be called Code Interpreter. Now it's called Advanced Data Analysis plugin, where you can ask it, okay, analyze me this data set, find me interesting. I can even show you, I can ask it, I uploaded the data set, find some interesting relationships, it plots charts, it does all kind of things, and I haven't written a line of code. So yeah, it's becoming more and more powerful, and it's exploding. I mean, the whole world is investing billions and billions in ChatGPT and related technologies. Not just ChatGPT, Google has its own, Apple have their own, Oracle have their own. It's like we are observing competition at a massive world scale that we haven't seen for a long time. I mean, this is basically like a new dot-com bubble, or like the old industrial revolution, basically having giant companies competing. I would say probably consequences will be the same. Many, if you could short sell the whole AI market, you would probably do very well in the long run. But if you could pick the winners of this battle, you would also do very, very well if you would pick them ex ante, of course. Anyhow, let me stop a little bit because I'll just keep talking.
Okay, thank you, Professor Rasa. So, Paul, in many of our conversations earlier, a lot of people and we discussed that it is a chatbot and it is a large language model, so it generates text. And today's topic is financial, and we also had some discussions earlier that when you get arithmetic, it gives very garbled answers because the text is correct, but the arithmetic part, even simple things before this code interpreter gave was pretty jam. So I wanted to get some insights from you how this language model and this analysis of finance, because finance is all numbers and it has a lot of arithmetic built inside. So your expert views and what do you see in that?
Yes, yeah, thank you very much, Milent. Yeah, so first of all, I'm a professor of financial accounting at EBS University, and I teach in the Master in Finance mainly, but also in the MBA program, and also teaching our kind of like main course on financial statement analysis there, okay? And I think Raja's explanations were really up to the point and really a great summary, I think, of what has happened in the last couple of months. And I really share the same excitement for this area as Raja does, and I could also talk for about this forever. And yes, and the implications, it's really difficult to predict, but they are already substantive as of today. However, the expectation as of today, because we're talking about today, not about some future state, expectation today that ChatGPT can come up with the best stock selection for your portfolio. Okay. I think this is definitely not the case, okay? Rather, where I see currently as it states great benefits for financial analysts is, first by, when it comes to gathering information, okay? This can be, optimized very quickly, and so you get much more speed in terms of being able to scrape data and kind of pre-process it. Secondly, you are much more able, much more capable to test your predictions in a basically lightning speed, right? So Raja just showed a glance of the data analysis tool that was set up by ChatGPT. Okay, and then finally, when it comes to the role of financial analysts, I think it can really help also to communicate results much faster. Okay, because a lot of the work of financial analysts also kind of like writing reports, writing summary statements about companies. So you're also going to become more quicker, okay? But it's not the almighty tool where you can ask, okay, where should I put my money in? Okay, this is definitely not the case. Although some companies, in particular, when you search the web, they claim that this is the case. They claim that they are, they are able with this tool and with a little bit of prompting, that they can come up with a perfect kind of like strategy for analysis. Okay, so Milent asked me to do a very brief demonstration of
Go ahead.
of what the current state
and then I will start the Q&A because there are lots of questions. So after your demo, I'll start straight Q&A.
Okay, I try to be like really quick. Okay, so this is what can be done very easily, and I'm just going to use the chat function and basically nothing else besides copy and paste. So basically we are giving in prompts, so it's always good to to give a little bit of context maybe. So maybe we can write, you are a financial analyst, okay, And we give the financial analyst, for example, a balance sheet. So we can write here is a balance sheet. And again, context would be good. So maybe we can say, okay, we want to give a balance sheet of a tech company. So I'm going to write of a tech company. Okay, and I can, for example, just go to Yahoo Finance. Okay, because there's data on, for example, Meta platforms, right? Basically Facebook. So basically financial information can be just pretty much copied and pasted into the chat. Okay, so it's in there. Now I can basically ask, give me some insights on the balance sheet, basically balance sheet of the company, do some ratio analysis, and do you consider it to be a good investment, for example? Okay, we can ask that as well. Be a good investment. Okay, that's it. We hit enter and then see what happens. So at first, I mean, now it provides a lot of information about what it's doing. So it's first explaining basically what a balance sheet is, and then goes directly into the key observations. So it looks at that the company has growing assets, which went up from 133 billion in 2019 to 185 in 2022. So this is a positive sign. We can maybe briefly check upon that, right? So we can see 133 billion to 185. So this basically has figured it out. It does the same for the other balance sheet items, and then goes ahead and calculates financial ratios, most common ones like current ratio, basically to measure liquidity of the company, debt to equity ratio, measuring solvency and profitability then. And so it looks very, very reasonable. Generally, the recommendation would still be that you always double check whether it has really taken the correct numbers. Okay, because like Raja said, it's not really a calculator, so it's not doing basically an analysis like you would do via Excel, right? But rather it's trying to kind of like predict what is the next, so to speak, based on the data, the next possible token that makes most sense. All right, and so so I've been experimenting with the tool for more than a year, probably 1.5 years. So before basically ChatGPT, so in the previous version of OpenAI, GPT-2 and GPT-3. And back then we tried similar things basically, and there was a lot of what we call hallucinations. Okay, so a lot of made up analysis and statement of CEOs which we didn't put into the model. Okay, but the model got much better in this regard. We see much less of this hallucinations, but still the general recommendation is to double check every digit that you have, and particularly when you use it for professional means, let's say. Okay, so what is the investment consideration based on the data? There are both positive and negative signs. The increasing debt and declining working capital may be of concern. On the positive side, the company has been growing its asset and has a stable equity base. Financial ratios give a mixed picture. The increase in the debt to equity ratio suggests the company is becoming more leveraged, which could be a risk if earnings decline. However, the company seems to maintain good asset value per share. Before making an investment decision, it would be beneficial to consider additional factors like the income statement, cash flow statement, the competitive landscape, and other qualitative factors. That's asking for more information to make more informed decisions, like also a financial analyst would do, right? It's not kind of like really providing like, you should buy the stock or not. Okay. I have tried something else earlier today, basically. So for reasons of times, I'm maybe just going to show you basically the results. So I was basically as I was giving ChatGPT the balance sheet of Silicon Valley Bank, okay, which went bankrupt, as we all know, due to run on the bank and due to the increase in the interest rates. So I gave it a balance sheet, and I basically asked it to do an analysis similar to how you would maybe go ahead and trying to come up with a rating for that bank. Okay, so I asked ChatGPT to calculate the bank's financial solvency, providing an impact, likelihood, and the risk-adjusted capital score, which is often like a core ingredient of ratings, for each of these dimensions. And also give it information. It should use a 5-point scale for both impact and likelihood, and it should discuss price inflation, interest rate risk, economic recessions, price changes in the housing market, pandemic, war, and natural disaster, a run on the bank, and that it should, based on the computed risk-adjusted capital score, identify the one risk that possesses the most significant threat to the bank's financial insolvency. Okay, and the funny thing is here, like a disclaimer, this question has been asked before in March earlier this year on the company. Okay, and back then, basically ChatGPT's answer to that, that's there's no heightened risk in any area. Okay, so it was not able to predict back then, so to speak, that kind of like Silicon Valley, is going to be bankrupt. Okay, running it as of today, basically, it already again got better. Probably there's more context in there, so it correctly identified that the interest rate risk is significant. Okay, with a RAC score of 20, and then in the summary it also says that this is the most significant threat to the bank from the analysis point of view. Okay, so we do see, right? So also it's not always predicting it correctly. Again, following 6 months, it got better. Again, it's very, very powerful what you can do. Another disclaimer, but always be careful. It's of course not able to consider context. Okay, it's not considering the world as it's currently going on outside. This is something you always need to try to inject as additional information to the model. Okay, that's it for my brief presentation, and then I think we have still half an hour left for the Q&A.
Thank you, Paul. But there are many questions generated. So first question to you, based on what you have shown from our audience called Ram Nandana. I hope I promised you correctly. How does this will support CFO function? So your brief overview. How CFO will get supported by what we have shown just now?
I mean, would be like similar, right? I mean, now we've got thousands of what we call here in Germany controllers, basically, that generate reports, right? They look at the numbers and they write and try to make sense out of what has happened to the different line items, try to explain variances to the budget, etc., etc. Okay, so this task, okay, this will be definitely partly assisted by or optimized, or should be, okay, by these upcoming tools. So I think so there are a lot of possible things that you can do also inside the firm. For that, of course, you cannot use kind of like or you wouldn't use necessarily the chat function, but you would rather use the former so-called code interpreter or the advanced data analysis tool, as Raja was laying out, right? Yes, but still the question is, right, is given that the data is sensitive that you're going to put in there, right? The question is kind of like always like, you know, do you basically believe kind of like what is written in the disclaimer, that none of the data will be used for kind of like against you, or, you know, or sold to someone, or cannot be assessed by someone that puts in a similar prompt at the others, you know, at the other side of the computer, and then gets your information, right? So probably, right, OpenAI is definitely working on, you know, trying to prevent this incidences, but we read in the past that that this data, you know, could be assessed then by other parties, basically, right? So an alternative to that could be maybe self-hosted models. Okay, we also see a lot of improvements in self-hosted models. like the Lava model, for example, that then, however, would need to be trained, but a lot of internal data.
Okay, thank you, Paul. So there is a
Let me add one more thing, which I think Paul touched upon, and I think it's very important. And I think we're going to see major changes coming up to us. And it reminds me of something that we have seen previously. So, if you remember the times, I don't know whether how young audience is, but when the first time YouTube appeared. When YouTube appeared, it was basically a collection of completely illegal videos, like no copyright, nothing, everything was illegal. You could watch movies, you could watch whatever, everything was on YouTube, basically. And then Google bought YouTube. And, everybody was saying, like, Google is going to be drowning in lawsuits, and this is going to be a loss. And that was probably the single best investment that Google has ever done since they exist. And then basically what happened is the government introduced what we nowadays know as the MCA, or Digital Millennium Copyright Act, which basically does not, what Google has an obligation to is to have, let's say, reasonable effort to remove illegal stuff and act if somebody complains. But they don't have to verify if each and every video is actually legal, because that's very, very difficult and expensive process. And I believe something similar is going to happen with large language models, because currently, ChatGPT is trained on basically all the text on the internet. They went even further. They scraped all the audio from all the movies and all the audio of all the songs. So basically all text reachable in video, audio, text, any form, graphic form. They have scraped basically all the text that you can find in any form or shape. Do they have legal right to do it? Well, probably not. Okay.
There are two legal suits against OpenAI. They are going on that copyright violations, but I don't know what will be the outcome on that.
I'm quite confident that we will have a new law that will be similar to Digital Millennium Copyright Act, that they will have to, if somebody asks them to remove something that somebody wrote and calls a copyright, they will have to remove it somehow. But let's see, currently we don't have it.
Okay, Rasa, there is a question from, I think, somebody from our academician is in that. His name is Shoaib. He is saying that how do you use ChatGPT in teaching in assessments, in financial courses?
So I have two approaches in using ChatGPT. One approach is banning ChatGPT completely, okay? So there are courses where I completely ban ChatGPT, and students have to do a written exam as a consequence, because I don't believe in essays. I think that ChatGPT writes better essays than an average student. So, of course, it's nice if people can write essays with the help of ChatGPT, or even analyze data with the help of ChatGPT. And we as educators should help them learn this as well. But, when I walk into, I don't know, a student cafe or a library, like everybody has at least a couple of windows in their browser with different ChatGPT prompts open. So what I try to do is I try to help students also to learn how to use it. And, let me give you some examples, So, and, I think we can do now in class things that we were not able to do before. So, let me show you an example. I can, for example, say to ChatGPT, I teach a fintech class, and one of the things that we learn in this class is to write programs at EVM, Ethereum Virtual Machine. Its programming language is called Solidity. So this is a cryptocurrency network, and has a Solidity programming language on top of it, and currency is Ethereum. So I can say, for example, to ChatGPT, sorry, I have code interpreter. So write me a Solidity code that will enable secure voting, for example, for Indian parties, political parties. And I will get the code, okay? Well, of course, a simple example, it will generate me a simple example of a Solidity code that actually, if I would copy now and execute on Ethereum virtual machine, this would actually work, okay? So it will create a code that works. Now the question is, does this code do actually what I want it to do? That's another topic, okay? This is something we can discuss. I have seen all kinds of things where I have created auctions and then the money was transferred into the wrong account. So winner of the auction didn't pay but got money, okay? And you can even code by generating proper prompts, okay? So for example, here I asked it to write a code that will allow for voting, but no single Indian political party was mentioned. I can say add political parties in India. And I can do even spelling errors, as you can have seen. Okay, now it's kind of slow for this demonstration, but it will create an array which will contain also these political parties that ChatGPT has found that exists in India. But there are lots of political parties in India, so this takes some time. But you see, it's creating basically an array which will contain these political parties now in the system. And you can ask it, add comments into code. You can change the code, etc., etc. You can do all kind of things that will work. So in one class, actually, I ask students actually to use ChatGPT and to create things with ChatGPT. And actually, we have been improved in the productivity and output in these classes, and students can create more than they used to be able to create before existence of ChatGPT.
Rasa, there is a question, I think also incidentally from academician, whose name is Rahul. He says how it will impact our daily lives of teacher and student, how learning will be undergo a transformation in financial courses.
I mean, I can tell you, it's already, I think it's difficult to predict how it will, because it already has impacted dramatically. Like, as I said, if you go into any library or a student coffee shop, you will see students having always basically continuously open ChatGPT window in their browser. So it has already impacted dramatically. Their students are using it massively. And I think it's a good thing. You learn with it. You can ask it to write you code. Then you can ask it, okay, explain me what is the point of the line 56 in this code that you have generated. And it will do a pretty good job in explaining you. Sometimes it will give you false answers. One should be very careful, but still, I think it has dramatically improved and led to almost a personal teaching assistant that you have at your disposal if you're a student. If you are a teacher, you have to adapt very quickly. You had to adapt very quickly. I think if you haven't already, you are too late, because almost any task that you give it, like if you would test it, I don't know, 4 months ago and gave it like some arithmetic problems, it would make stupid mistake. It was, you could make it. I still remember, this doesn't work anymore. Let me show you, what is 2 plus 2? And, I used to, I was able to do this just a couple of months ago. No, it is 5. It would apologize like a couple of months ago. Okay, sorry.
Okay, I think we have asked related to academia. There is a student question. And Paul, this is a question I would like you to take. What are the issues related to privacy of data that is being fed to the transformer model? I think he's a student from Sankal. So his question is related to privacy and how safe it is using this tool.
Yeah, I think I touched upon it a little bit. So it's really difficult to tell. I mean, in disclaimers, it is stated that basically the data is so to speak safe, right? But I would be careful with very sensitive data. I think that publicly available data, I mean, like in my demonstrations, or that's something that is disclosed and you want to analyze, I mean, this makes total sense to use it for that purpose. But I think very sensitive data, I don't know, on patents or maybe code of a software application that you build that has some competitive edge. I would be now like very concerned about privacy issues here. But as I said, I've been following work of OpenAI over the last 18 months, and I mean, I think they have really done a lot in terms of making sure that they have more and more measures in place, more burdens that that the data is kept safe. Okay, so that would be my answer.
Yeah, there is another follow-up question from Parth. Do you think it has a capability to render out investment strategies? And there is another question from another participant saying that if you have to check everything what it does, then how does it will improve the productivity? He says everything ChatGPT is doing, if you are saying it is to be validated, then where will be the productivity gain will come from?
No, I mean, I do think that double checking information is still much faster and doing the calculations and kind of like thinking about, does it make sense? Like what has happened to profit margin? Where's growth coming from? I mean, my assumption would be, I mean, if it's about money that you put down, right? You have to be just very safe about or confident about what you're doing. So you should be double checking. But double checking, it's much quicker to do than than doing everything from scratch, right? So there's still efficiency gains. But of course, it's not going to be it's not going to be just very. I mean, you shouldn't take it at face value. So therefore, the improvement that can be, I mean, it will be tremendous, but not, of course, in lightning speed if you want to do it seriously.
I mean, I would add here to Paul's opinion, I would think of it as having an assistant, an intern, and then this intern does a job, and then you have to check whether this job has been done correctly. You're basically having a free intern working for you. Is any intern perfect? No, definitely not. But is this better than an average intern? Well, I don't know, maybe. If not, it will soon be.
Okay, so Rasa, there is a question from one of the students. Perhaps he is expecting to pursue MBA or MS with your school. Ansh Bhatia, he says, what kind of jobs will be available if everything ChatGPT is teaching? Okay, and should we do then this kind of education, or will the presently traditional jobs it will replace totally? So I've combined some student question into one.
Okay, let me tell you a couple of things on this dimension. Observation number one, I still remember when, VCR tapes appeared, when these video recorders and tapes appeared. And then I think one of the big companies, I don't know, Panasonic, Sony, or somebody like that, basically had a TV ad which stated, VCR is going to kill music teachers. Music teachers are not going to exist. You'll just learn how to play piano by watching video recordings. Well, it didn't happen, okay? First, I think that, education is not only about, learning facts, learning how to do stuff. Education is much more than that. I mean, students, when they come on campus, they grow up together, they build networks, they learn from each other. I would dare to say students learn more from each other than they learn from me as their professor. It's about interacting with people. It's about living with people. It's about many, many dimensions which ChatGPT will never, never replace. Are we going to be using ChatGPT in classes? Of course, because we need to prepare you for the real life. And when you start working, you will be required almost to use some form of a large language model. Due to data privacy mentioned, it is going to be probably, Deloitte is not going to upload data, or Ernst & Young, to ChatGPT, but they will have internal models that will do that for them. This is why everybody's buying NVIDIA cards, because they want to have their own internal models.
So what is your advice to him? I mean, do you think he should pursue, or there will not be traditional jobs available in finance? That is what is very pointed question.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that when it comes to jobs in finance, like any jobs, they're going to change. As I said, I don't think that they're going to disappear. Just the job is going to be different. It's, I mean, just think about it, did accountants disappear when calculators were invented? No, we still do accounting, we still need to do people. But, if you would rewind the movie back, like, I don't know, like 50, 60 years back, people were doing accounting with a calculator and not with Excel spreadsheets. But did accountants disappear? Of course not. It's just jobs will change. I'm actually very optimistic. I think that productivity will increase, wealth will be created, and the world is going to be a better place.
We have another interesting question from Nikhil Patil. He says, can I use ChatGPT in the trading and make some money for trading?
Yeah, I think we answered upon that question during the presentation, right? I think it's not going. I mean, it's not going to give you good suggestion to pick stocks. I wouldn't.
And they are not reliable as well. I mean, you cannot have a reliable forecast from ChatGPT, so it is highly risky. And of course, I will not recommend that you use trading strategies based on ChatGPT, at least not today.
I mean, let me say it like this. You have to understand how the model works. And model just gives you the most likely next token. That does not mean that what it says is the realization in the future. It's just based on probabilities of the past. It can, these machines cannot predict the future. This is not what these machines can do. This is not what these models are built for. I know that people will be using them for all kinds of things where it doesn't make sense, like sentiment analysis that they have mentioned. People ask ChatGPT, is this a negative or a positive sentiment sentence? And ChatGPT will tell you negative or positive, because this is the question, but the process is somewhat random. You have this heat parameter, and it will just, if you repeat the question 3 times, probably 2 out of 3 times you will get a different answer.
Mm-hmm. Maybe adding a few points on the last two questions. So basically, I'm also very, very optimistic, but I'm also optimistic in terms of jobs. I think Raja is very, very right in saying that those jobs won't disappear, but they will become different. But you put it very, very positively in terms of the role of the financial analyst, right? So the financial analyst now can greatly increase the efficiency of basically, putting the data together, do the ground analysis, and then take all the time to focus on what ChatGPT can do, right? Or those large language models, is to trying to forecast future context of the firm. Okay, so what are possible scenarios that could happen here, right? They will have much more time to focus on this really, really complex, really, let's say, subjective, gut feeling like tasks, okay, with being able to build it upon a much greater foundation of information. So my my expectation would be then that those forecasts should become better using that, and the job will become actually much more interesting and still very relevant for efficient markets.
Okay, Rasa, there is a question. There are 2-3 questions I will club and ask you. How generative AI and large language models can drive financial systems innovation? I think it's in fintech, because I think they heard that you are also teaching fintech. And that is a question from Binit. Of course, he has asked in the Indian context. Based on your answer, I will try to contextualize for India. But what you think, because of the generative AI, what could be the innovation in fintech area? That is, I think, if you answer, I will try to add the Indian color in that.
Interesting question. To be honest, I'm not 100% sure at the moment, because when we talk about generative AI, we usually talk about images, we talk about voice, we talk about video. And these are the 3 most common applications of generative AI, in a sense that you issue a textual prompt, and as an output, you don't get a text, but you get either video, audio, or an image. If this is what the question assumes, this is what I normally assume under generative AI. And what we can see is that many creative industries are being affected by that. I can imagine, a very detrimental effect on the financial industry, in a sense of large financial fraud, when generative AI is used on a very large scale. So I can give you, I don't know whether you have seen, but Microsoft has a machine learning platform where you give it 3 seconds of your voice. It's just a couple of seconds is needed, and then the machine can almost fully imitate the sounding of your voice and can say whatever it wants using basically your voice. And I can imagine, now imagine like somebody starts misusing these type of platforms for hacking your banks and calling banking telephone support and pretending it's you, impersonating other people, etc., etc. So I see a big catastrophic risk if misused, and I think that we need to be very, very cautious about these kind of events. But the direct influence of generative AI on financial industry, I don't see it. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm missing something big. It's possible.
So let me ask you a follow-up question, not from participant, from my side. Financial teaching, most of the courses which we have used, we use Monte Carlo simulation to modeling uncertainty. Now, at a large scale, this particular model can drive using the advanced data analytics uncertainty. So will it be useful to modeling the simulations which is there, and there will be an opportunity?
I mean, look, it already is in actually in this earlier called code interpreter. Now I think it's advanced analytics or something like that. You can already run simulations. You can ask it to run simulations. So people are already using it and building it, and especially if you enrich it with plugins like Wolfram Alpha plugin from Mathematica, etc. I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, it's being used for all kind of analytical stuff, including Monte Carlo simulations. I totally agree. This is yeah. I think that many of these things can be done using.
Okay. Now
AI.
there is a question from Debolina. Can ChatGPT independently formulate financial strategy? I think we have answered that, but your quick conclusion on that. Independently formulate financial strategies. I doubt, but your view, Rasa.
I think in this regard, how the tool can be used is like a brainstorming partner, maybe. Okay, so maybe some of you have tried it already, but when you try to think about an important problem, somehow when you write a list, right, one tends to overlook certain things, right? But so basically, if you bring your ideas and kind of like the context and the question into ChatGPT, then my experience was that you kind of like get like a new like inspiration, at least for for new innovative other solutions for important problems. And so also I think this could apply for to financial strategies of companies, that they maybe when kind of like designing it, and not to overlook possible scenarios, you can use it to brainstorm additional ideas. I think this is what it can deliver at its current form.
Okay, there is another interesting question. You can decide who wants to take, from Jatin Kumar. Of course, he has used the word IB, which I am not clear, but his overall question is how it will impact MBA and MS education, and what kind of career opportunities will come based on generative AI, and will you be integrating in your curriculums generative AI? That is what his question, but he has used another thing called IB, which I am not understood.
Mhm. So IB means investment banking.
Okay.
And I can quickly just say, we have already integrated, especially when it comes to generating code as a generative AI. We don't do much related to images and videos and stuff like that. However, I use it quite a lot sometimes for preparing presentations. I think for preparing PowerPoints, actually using some of the generative AI models for images does help. But I think it mostly helps in generating text, in generating analysis, and in generating computer code in various programming languages that you can use to develop certain projects that we do actually in various classes. So we already do use it now for some time. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. Should people learn how to use it? Of course.
There is a question from Srinivasan. He says, what could be different types of application of generative AI in banking sector? Paul or Rasa, any views? In banking sector, what could be these applications?
I mean, I think what a lot of companies and or startups go after now is has to do with so-called embeddings feature of OpenAI. So basically, when you sit on a lot of data, so for example, it could be conversational data between bank assistants and bank customers in the chat, okay, that you use the data, okay, so questions that get asked over and over again, okay, to build an automatic basically assistant that is able to sort out, so to speak, the most pressing but standard questions that the customers have, right? So it does not only apply to the banking industry, but definitely it can kind of like help there, right? So that you can bring down kind of like human involvement a lot, and then the humans are able to just hone in on the most difficult, most complex questions that the customers have. So I think customer experience also in the banking industry, I think this is as in most of the other industries, kind of the low-hanging fruit, okay, with which or that companies start to tackle here.
Okay, there is another question, and that will be the last one I will take. Since it is generative AI and generates a lot of summary, Rasa, first to you, will it impact qualitative research? Because or will you do manual coding, or will you use these large language models for qualitative research? I think we have some folks from academics here.
Yeah. So when it comes to generation of data or coding of data, etc., or using ChatGPT to analyze text in certain forms of shapes, I don't think that ChatGPT itself will be used much. However, advanced machine learning models will. And we have, based on large language model, for example, of ChatGPT, something called sentiment neuron, that has just been basically using a similar concept, but it has been trained on something that has sentiment scores. In this particular case, these are Amazon reviews. So I really do believe that we will be using these kind of machine learning models and large language models just trained on in a different way than text generating models. I think it would be fundamentally wrong to use ChatGPT to score sentiment. However, if you train the underlying large language model on a data set which contains sentiment information, and OpenAI has released this, it's called sentiment neuron, then it makes sense, and then it makes sense using it. So I believe that similar applications of derivatives of these large language models, which are domain specifically trained, are going to be used a lot.
Okay, I think we are coming to the end of that. So your last comment, Rasa, then I will hand over to Paul. Your overall summary, how it will impact and what will be the future going forward for the students who are on this particular webinar. Your advice, what they should do, your expert advice.
Let me say it like this. I think that, we have just touched upon a little space of the machine learning transformation that we are currently witnessing. Large language models are just a small part of it. If you observe, for example, if you've recently driven in, let's say, a reasonably new Tesla car, which has had all the software updates that have been issued recently, you will see how dramatic change we have lived basically over a year. A year ago, they were really not that good. They were much worse than an average driver. Now, I would dare to say they drive better in full traffic than an average driver. I believe we are just starting, and very, very large companies with very, very deep pockets are pouring lots of money into all these new technologies. And the world is going to be changing quite a lot, from robots that are being trained, to cars that are being trained, to flying vehicles that are being trained, to machines that talk to us. Translation, I don't know whether you have seen, like 2 days ago was a released video of basically live translation to any language, where it's not only that it live translates sounds in a way I would sound if I speak French or German, but it also moves my lips on a corresponding video. Okay, so this is the level that we have reached, and this is just the scratch of the surface. We have a raised hand. Maybe Jatin Kumar has raised a hand.
Yes. Okay. Paul, you have some last comments for our audience?
So my advice for students would be, I think, like with everything, get your hands dirty, okay? Meaning that get involved, try to understand what's going on. It's still very early game, okay? And there's a lot to win. I think it totally makes sense that you maybe go a little bit also into, things like prompt engineering, okay? To be able to maybe use it more effectively even, okay? Because don't be shy, don't be afraid. So learning to code basically, and then therefore being able to combine your domain specific knowledge with those new tools is super valuable for the long run.
I apologize. I want to jump in here with what Paul said, because I completely skipped that part of the question, and I 100% agree with Paul. I literally, when ChatGPT started, I was spending like an hour a day just playing with it and learning and being curious. And, I think we are living in a world that is changing tremendously quickly currently. And the only thing we can and should do is just to actively participate in this, learn and absorb.
Okay. So we are coming to the end of this particular session. So on behalf of SPJMR, I would like to thank Professor Rasa and Professor Paul for your expert comments, wonderful insights, answering patiently the questions of our audiences. I would like to thank all participants. I think they are pretty very good question, very challenging questions, thought-provoking questions. So do join us for our next webinar as well. And I would like to thank SPGMR marketing team led by Nusrat, our GMP team led by Deepali from bringing these webinars continuously. So thank you all, and we will look forward for you joining our next webinar series in 15 days from now. Thank you, and have a great night in India and a great day, whatever is remaining for Paul and Rasa in Germany. Thank you, and see you soon.